welcome back. Hope you had a good break. Now we've got a couple of other speakers who are in this session. Jarmila Kołowska. Oh yeah, brilliant, okay. And you're all here. Take the one at the end and I'll take the middle. Take the one at the end, take the one at the end. Perfect, perfect. Okay, now what this next 40 minutes, we wanted the next 40 minutes to be about, are sort of more personal stories. We've had a very personal story from Lord Brown, but we wanted to get the experiences of people inside companies, because sometimes it's not Lord Brown level, it's ordinary people working in companies at middle management, upper management, lower management. It's those experiences that are very important. So what we're going to do is we're going to hear from two people who are going to give their experiences, companies that are not global names, but companies that are down from the IBMs and the Sodexos, companies that don't have hundreds of thousands of employees. Then we're going to hear a little bit about a survey, and I'll let Petra describe that in a bit, but we're going to hear a little bit about a survey of employees and management in Prague, and then we're going to hear a little bit about the Swiss experience, which actually might be interesting. We want this whole afternoon to be sharing experiences, to provoke, to enlighten, to stimulate, and to take you something to go away with. So we've got sort of several things going on in this session. But I did want to start then with these two. I'm going to get two people just to describe their own experiences. And we'll start, I think, with Jarmila Kołowska, who's an executive director at Auto Team, yeah, which is a car dealer. Has everybody heard of it? I know it's here, and I hadn't heard of it. Is it well known in Czech Republic?
Not yet. It's a startup company.
Right,
so
startup
company. We've been in the market for 1 year now, so
okay.
Not that well known.
Jarmila, come up to the podium and just tell us your experience, if you would.
Yep.
Yep.
Can I stay seated?
Oh, well, you can stay seated, yeah, as you like. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So first of all, I would like to say that I'm amazed and pleased with how many people are here and how much attention companies such as IBM pay to this topic of LGBT inclusion. And even though I lived my life openly as a gay person, it actually makes me still feel better about myself. So thank you for that. A little bit about myself. I'm 38 years old. I live with a partner and we raise 2 kids, 2 daughters, 6 and 8 years old. In terms of my career, I'm going to let you down a little bit because I spent most of my career with GE, so another big company. I started there during my university studies at the lowest position possible at that time, and worked there for 13 years and made it all the way up to board -1 level. So I had a chance to actually develop my career in GE. I had lots of opportunities and I'm thankful for that. After those 13 years, I was fired, not because I was gay, but because I was redundant. Oops. It was true, so I have to tell the truth. And then I decided to start my own company because that's what I always wanted to do. So I did that. I came across this idea of mobile car washing. I thought, for a change I will earn money with hands and not with brain. But I couldn't make it work here in Czech Republic, so I thought Scandinavia would be the perfect place to do that. So I moved there, started the company, hired employees, and soon after that I realized that to fulfill what I had in my business case, in my Excel file, to achieve those numbers, will be just so much more work and time and money, and I just couldn't afford it because I was supporting my family. So I moved back, and I was hired for Auto Team. As a startup company, I was hired there to set the business up and grow it and hopefully make it profitable one day. And that's what I'm doing now. In terms of me being gay, I'm stranger in many ways. One of them being that I realized I was gay very late in my life. I was 22 at that time when I first fell in love with a girl. For her, it was also first relationship with a girl, so we were completely confused about what was going on. But as time passed, we realized it wasn't something that was going to go away, and that we are probably not heterosexual as we thought until then. And so we were forced to tell our closest friends. However, we kept it secret from most of the world. We thought. Of course, it wasn't true, as we found out later on, because many people knew anyway, including our families. It changed for me in 2005, when I moved to Norway to work there, because in Czech Republic I found it really, really easy to stay in the closet, because people in general don't talk about their private lives. Like, nobody asks you, are you in a relationship or not? In Norway, it's the opposite. I still didn't remember the names of my new colleagues, and I was already forced to answer questions about whether I'm in a relationship or not, or what he did, yeah? So that was my answer. I decided to lie. But then, you know, it took me, I don't know, 3 weeks or so, and I realized that that was not the way forward. I couldn't live in denial anymore. And I organized a housewarming party where I invited my colleagues and I told everyone. And of course, nothing happened. Nothing major happened. They were just laughing, you know, hugging me, and they said, so her name is not Pavel, is it? No. So it was really easy, and you know, since then I actually live openly. Of course, now it's inevitable for me to live my life openly as I'm raising kids, because if I'm to raise confident kids, I have to be open to everyone. Actually, now I'm forced, whenever I bring my kids to a new environment, I have to actively say what the situation is. Like when, you know, the older daughter, when she went to school, we actually met with the teachers and with the director of the school. We explained the situation, let them ask any questions that they had, ask them to pay a little bit more attention to our daughter, and if they spotted anything, to let us know. And so there is no other way for me than to live openly.
Thank you for that. Does the American sitcom Modern Family, is that shown in Czech Republic?
It's not shown, but it can be downloaded still.
How many people have seen Modern Family? Yeah, a few of you. If you haven't, then download it. It's very funny. Just how much do you feel you're a pioneer in this country, and how much is what you're doing, does it feel fairly normal to you now?
I've been trying to remember how many people are openly gay, or I've met in the workplace that were openly gay. And there was some, and for sure there were much more that were not openly gay, that were closeted. So in a way, I feel as a pioneer, at least I did feel this way like 10 years ago when I started my coming out. I think as the time progresses, the situation changes really rapidly. So, and the younger generation, I think, feels much more comfortable with themselves and much more comfortable with being openly gay.
That's my experience in the UK too. Okay, thank you very much. We will have time for follow-up questions and such like. I want to now ask Dusan Savic to give us his experience, General Manager at Brown Forman. Brown Forman is a US-based independent marketer and producer of wines and spirits. Yeah, yes. Yeah. You've got a mic?
No.
Yeah. No, okay.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. First of all, I would like to thank again for this opportunity to be part of the Pride Business Forum, and of course, tell you the story about my life as a gay guy. Before I start, maybe just to clarify the thing, the Brown Forman is a company that is a producer and maker of Jack Daniel's whiskey. I think many people would know that rather than the name of the company, and then of course some other spirit brands. But back to me, actually, what I would like to mention over here is that I live in Czech Republic since the year 1992, and since that time basically I was here but also in several other markets or several other countries. And why am I saying that is basically that I had experience of being gay in the Czech Republic, and thereafter, when me and my husband today were moved because of my company to Serbia. Serbia is something like Russia almost. in terms of being gay, you can't really be that much open. We were there for 2 years, experienced that thing as well. After that, we experienced even worse thing because we were moved to Dubai, to the Middle East, where we spent additional 2 years. And of course, you can't really be openly gay over there. You can't even live under one roof unless you are in a blood relationship. And after that, back to Prague, and after Prague, we went to Canada for 8.5 years, and then experienced completely different, if you like, life of being openly gay, because of course Canada is one of the countries that is at the forefront of the, not only all the human rights, but actually of the LGBT community as well. And now we are back to Prague. In terms of being openly gay at work, and especially here in Czech Republic, because that's exactly where I started my first work and first job, I have to admit I wasn't openly gay at work, because I think I was dealing also with the issues with myself, of course, how much is that going to be acceptable, let's say, to the colleagues and of course to the employer. And also I think what I've just realized now coming back from Canada, I think also because there was no so-called support network around you that would actually help you decide on yourself that you are who you are and that you should be proud of who you are, and then to be able to go freely at work and say, I am who I am, and you don't have to promote, of course, your sexual orientation, but if you are asked, of course, that if you are asked who your wife or who your partner is, that you are able to say so. In Canada, I have to say, and for those people who come, I guess you from Switzerland definitely, there is a community over there who would support you. There is a community center, and those people can really help you if you are in need and if you really want to find yourself at work. So that said, at the very beginning, I wasn't, but what did really help at the second employer, and that was really a big multinational company called British American Tobacco, what helped wasn't really the company itself, but actually the people that were working over there. Because the people who were working over there were much younger, they were more open-minded, Czech Republic was doing pretty well at that time, and of course, the company was based here in Prague. And just being in that open environment, it did enable me to actually say, yes, I am, and this is my partner, Karel, and we started talking to everybody. So there was no issue whatsoever. It did actually start to be a little bit more tricky, let's say, when we, of course, were moved with that company to the other 2 countries. I don't have to talk about it, actually. But more importantly, I think with my last job, which I currently have with the same company, is that I work for the company that is actually one of the largest American producer of spirits. However, that comes from the part of the country called Kentucky, that's a state, which is something like Vysočina here in Czech Republic, right? If you know Czech Republic. It's not really an open-minded state. It's not really something that you would expect people to really be open, especially towards being a member of the LGBT, but many other things. It's really, really conservative, if you like, or southern state. Well, at that company, when I started, of course, I started here in Prague, and I was open just because I was open at the previous company as well. But when I moved to Canada and I had to go to Louisville for so many meetings during the year, I did not say who I am, basically. Because, of course, the very first question everybody asked you, and US is like that, and people are very much open and like to ask about your private life. They immediately ask you, how about your wife, how many kids you have? And of course, you don't say, you just either don't answer, you say just, I don't have kids, and you don't even answer anything about the wife. And that was back in 2005. Nevertheless, that company from that part of the United States has made unbelievable strides. I think it started in 2007. And today, it is at the forefront. I think it was even voted the best place to work for the LGBT community, because in those as few as, I think, 7 or 8 years, the company has a specific strategy on how to deal with the equality at work. There is a big, we have a chief diversity officer reporting straight to chief executive officer, basically one of the leading vice presidents of the company that is actually taking care of not only equality between men and women or between, let's say, the visible minorities that work at the company, but also the LGBT community. We also do have the so-called ERG groups, employee resource groups, and there are so many of those like Hispanic or the African American, but there is also LGBT one over there. And as of that time, I have to say, especially in the recent years, when you go to that Louisville, which is still sitting in that Kentucky as a state, and you go to that company, and even in the town today, there are the gay places which haven't existed over there a few years ago. Now they're gay bars, and even at that company, you can freely go and say and talk about who you really are. And basically, I can now easily say, not only here, but over there, yes, I'm married, 17 years, I have a husband, and there is no issue whatsoever. So I think what helps over there, not only that the corporation helps, but also, as I said, the network and the support of the community itself. So that's really, really, I think, important for the Czechs over here who live in Prague, let's say, that you build the community, because you can really support all those people who are as young as we were back in the day, to help them come out of the closet at work.
Dushan, let's role play. I'm like a colleague of yours, okay? I'm your colleague. I don't know you're gay, and you're going to tell me. Now, how do you do it? Just give me the conversation. So I'm gay, we're blah, blah, blah. So I say something like, oh, what did you do over the weekend, Dushan?
Oh, you know, I went out with my partner, or actually he's my husband now, and we went for a dinner somewhere else. I don't mention wherever. But you can really say that.
That, I think, is the absolute model of how to do it. Because there's another model, maybe this is closer to yours, Jarmila, where you invited everybody around for a party. I mean, how did you say, sit down, I've got something to tell you, or how did it work?
Yeah, that's what I pretty much did, yeah. It was a one-on-one conversation.
Right, yeah.
It was me and them. So.
Don't you think that's the harder way of doing it? That, to me, seems very difficult somehow.
Yeah, and maybe because I succeeded then, you know, I succeeded every time since then, so.
I mean, if I had to give advice, and I think, you know, just passing through these messages and experiences so people can pick them up and draw conclusions, my advice is, number one, do it really, really early. It's easier on the second day you're in a job than 3 years in the job. It's because after 3 years, you not only have to say, I'm gay, you also have to say, by the way, I've been kind of lying to you or not telling the truth or hiding something from you for the previous 3 years. And actually, most of your colleagues won't mind you being gay, but they'll feel slightly, you know, just slightly kind of, why didn't you tell me? Did you not think I would be able to deal with that? I mean, that you could have told me, you know. So it's always better to do it in the first 24 hours if you possibly can. And the second, I think, is the more casual you are about it, the better. The more kind of, oh yeah, my boyfriend and I, or my husband and I, or my girlfriend and I saw that movie, you know, the other day. Have you seen it? You know, it makes people feel a bit easier. Anyway, 2 very interesting experiences. We'll take some questions, but a larger survey of experiences of people in Czech Republic has been conducted. And I'm going to get Petra Thomas, who's an independent consultant to Pride, to talk us through the Pride survey.
Yeah. So good afternoon. I will change the topic a bit. I was told not to be too personal. So doesn't mind, I do things publicly, it's better. I will show you several slides, don't worry, it won't be too many numbers. It's written in the form of a report because I guess we can share it with you. As a Prague Pride, it's no secret, so there are some notice and some details on the slides. But of course, we can debate that later. And if you are interested in more details, then you can come to us and we will share it with you. I hope it will work. Yeah. So first things, it was debated here many times before. Are people out or not? As you can see, only 10. Yeah, one remark. We did it already twice. In 2013, we just did it as a, idea, and we wanted to confirm this year that the situation is stable or not if we have this good data. As you will see, the situation did not change much, or has not changed. So sometimes you will see 2013, 2015, but just for your illustration that the situation is more or less the same during these years. So 10%, 14% people are completely out, hiding it to no one in any situation, etc., etc. Then you have half of people that are out on demand. It's something like if it goes to that situation and you are really, let's say, maybe forced to admit that you are gay or you're lesbian, you will do that, and to most of the company. And then you have the James Bonds, as Lord Brown was talking about them, only to very few people, and as we were talking, even internally, the results, many people said, yeah, that was me. It was like a colleague at the head desk in the office, but for the rest of the company, I was trying to be invisible. And then you have 15% of the people that are completely hiding who they are. And it can be probably stressful for them. Why? They are mostly afraid of impact on their career, that being a gay or lesbian will simply limit their chances to be promoted. We have also data about discrimination, so you will see the results in more detail. We asked if lesbians and gays think the orientation can have what impact could it have on their career. You can see that 10 of them think that it might be positive. I don't know if it's show business or something. We don't have the data, but it's fun. Mostly neutral, but there is still a quarter of people who think the impact on career is clearly negative. And of course, these people are mostly hiding their sexual orientation because they are afraid what might happen, if they are revealed. Of course, it's not only about the personality and internal feelings, if I'm confident enough to go out. It's of course about the atmosphere in the company. As you can see in the third of companies, the atmosphere is mostly or completely liberal. Another third is mostly liberal, which means that as we know also from the other data, when it's completely free, it means like really no one is making an issue out of your orientation. If it's mostly liberal, it means that maybe it's not addressed and you can live without. It's not completely like everybody will celebrate and the company will join you on the Prague Pride, but you can live there and probably there are no issues. But in third of companies, the atmosphere is mostly unfriendly or hostile even. And you will see that company size, I know it's a terrible slide, but just for illustration, the red is total, and then we have a split with the company sizes. You can see that the mostly completely friendly liberal atmosphere is within small companies, which makes sense. If you join a company of 5, 8 people, you probably will know very quickly what the company is like and if you are able to fit there, if you are openly gay or not. The big companies are lagging slightly behind. It's not that the leader in completely friendly environment, although they could because they have the means to do that, but they are good in creating mostly friendly or liberal, which is probably some effects of HR policies, etc. You have some rules in such big companies which can prevent some nasty behavior. And in terms of hostile, it's pretty much the same across all company sizes, with the exception of the small ones. Did people experience some discrimination? Yes. You can see that almost 50 of them, yes. And it's not just some very, let's say, light discrimination in terms of nasty comments or whatever, hints, jokes, etc., which might be, of course, nasty as well. But it's listed here. It's very severe cases, like, for example, in the police, when they found out you are gay, you are almost regarded as unfitted to do a job of a policeman. The same for the army. There are problems with when it comes to hiring interview, and people, as we were talking about already, found out they are gay. You are told the job is gone, etc., etc., even though you know that it's not. Then there are the practical problems, like we were talking about them, like, for example, business trips, during the economic downturn, everybody was cutting costs, so people had to share rooms on business trips, and now what? You go with your heterosexual colleague, you are gay, he might or might not know, or maybe he is suspicious, or you are suspicious, I don't know. And then what? How to deal with the situation. The same with the team activities. Yeah, you were talking the example of the sport teams, etc. But in the practical problems that, for example, people do not want to, create the team with you because they think that they are a bit different. So yes, we can be a team, but we are too different to be part of the team. Even your task can be different. And many other stories. We have this, if you're interested, we can provide it and share with you, of course, as well. And yeah, we have also even some cases of layoffs No, that it was, of course, the pretext was cannot be like that. Yeah, but there is, the economic crisis helped a lot. So if you wanted to get rid of such diversity in your company, you had a lot of chance during past years. Questions that might be interesting for you. Should companies, or do companies have some policy for diversity support? As you can see, yeah, 15% of the company have some, mostly the big ones, 250 plus, only the biggest one. I don't show the smaller ones because it's almost non-existent there. You can see that in 12% cases it's there, but on the paper. And what is maybe more interesting than no is that 40% of people, gay and lesbian, so they could be inclined to search for such kind of practices and policy. They do not know if their company has such a framework for diversity support or not. Would they like to have one or want? Yes, they would. As you can see, 55% definitely yes, 27% no. Of course, there are people who say no. The primary reason is that they regard their sexual orientation as a private matter, which is kind of interesting because then when you talk to these people, and we know it as a Prague Pride, when we started, so the argument was all the time the same. I mean, it's too private matter, why to go out to the street with my private matter? Oh yeah, so just sorry, but we are different in, let's say, yeah, in certain private things as heterosexuals, and honestly, if you're not in the porn industry, then you can keep your privacy level pretty much consistent as with heterosexuals. So, but this argument is still in the minds of these LGBT people, that they are afraid to ask for some rights and to accept this, this framework, because it might be too private, to show I'm gay or lesbian. And I guess that's pretty, and yeah, would they participate? You have to take into account we are in the Czech Republic, so the level of active support is very high in the pubs. With the more beers, the higher the participation level. And of course, then comes the reality. So you cannot expect that everyone will jump wagon and just to your policy and will be active supporter. And that's it.
Petra, thank you very, very much indeed. Does anybody want to just ask a quick question about the survey or about any of the findings? Has anybody got a point they want to make? Because, Petra, I just want to raise one issue, and this slightly concerns me about discrimination. It's that if I'm gay, which I am, if I'm gay and I don't get a job or I get laid off, and you ask me, you come up with a clipboard and you say, have you been discriminated against? I'm wearing gay glasses that kind of, I'm looking at it through that gay framework, and I may say, I may have told myself I didn't get that job because I'm gay. But there are lots of other people who don't get jobs and who get laid off and have a shit time at work, basically. And you can have the danger of too many people just thinking that everything bad that happens to them in their life is because they're gay, not taking into account that actually bad things happen 20% of the time in everybody's life, and you need to be careful of that.
So you're worried if you are not misinterpreting and like
overestimating the discrimination.
Overestimating.
Yeah.
Honestly, when I wrote these answers and what I hear around, I don't think so. And I guess the people are even more, let's say they are more brave than we think, because my experience with, as I work for different companies, is that people are not much inclined to complain. And you know how it is. There are two departments you would like to avoid in a big company, IT and HR. Sorry, I mean, this is just how it probably is. So definitely not to HR, and even like for themselves, you know, it doesn't work. I wouldn't say Czech complain too much, you know, in this. Okay, they are murmuring, you know, everything is bad, etc., etc. But when it, and another reason is that the descriptions of the cases were pretty detailed. And many times it was told verbally that you're not fitting in the company atmosphere, team spirit, whatever, you know, etc. And there were conflicts that with the promotion, because, for example, there was some team of sales guys, you know, this macho, you know, talking and whatever, and so you're gay, so you cannot be with us because you're not that macho.
Let's get a perspective from a different country. We've talked a lot about the UK because there are some of us from the UK. We've heard a little bit about some other countries. We've had French speakers. We've had others. I'd like to hear from Daniel Seeler if you'd give us a little bit of Swiss perspective, and we'll see if there are lessons to draw from that.
Ja, grüezi miteinander. Thank you for having me today and speaking about that little island in Europe that is a little bit special in many ways, called Switzerland. When I was invited here to talk about how the LGBT diversity situation is in Switzerland, I thought and I said, is there any? And as part of the board of Network, which is the Swiss Gay Manager Association, I went back to my board and I go like, what am I going to tell them? And I thought afterwards, and I tell them with my little story. Earlier we were asked whether we had a good or a bad coming out. I had two, a bad and a good one. The first one, we're going back to the 80s when I was working for one of the big 8 financial or accounting companies, today the big 4s. I was up for promotion to senior manager, and all my ratings were perfect. I was called to the managing partner of Switzerland, and he basically told me, you're a great guy, you do great work, but you're gay. I said, what does that mean? And he said to me, that was back in '88, we're not going to promote you. You're not having a future in this company. That was, for me, as an ambitious young man coming fresh out of school, etc., a shock, because I believed in the company and I believed in the oak door, if people know whom I'm talking about. I left the company and went to one of my clients and became the assistant of the president of the board, who had no idea that I was gay, and I decided myself to shut up and keep it a secret. We did a lot of travels, and on one of the travels, and you having dinners, etc., he asked me and said, why are you in the closet? You're gay. And I'm going like, oops, that was the complete opposite. I'm going like, and here we are like in '92. And to cut a long story short, that led to a very nice conversation and led to the fact that we started an LGBT diversity program, not a big one, but a small one in that company back in the '90s. I then had my career with that company abroad for many, many years, and I came back to Switzerland. And now, like 10 or 15 years later, back in Switzerland, I ask myself, where are we? Among the big companies, yes, they do have some rules and regulations and diversity and LGBT diversity. In which sense they are lived, I cannot comment on. And we have a lot of companies they don't. And looking at my country, I'm starting to ask, why is that? We recently did a survey where 70% of the Swiss, or more than 70% of the Swiss population, accept gay marriage, or for equal rights. We have about 88% of Swiss managers that we ask in our association, and those are about 400, are you out at the workplace? They said yes, and the majority of them said also that they don't have any problems with that. So we have a society that is ready, but obviously we have companies that think it might not necessary to have something, and we definitely have politicians in Switzerland where we lag behind, because when you look at the ILGA map, I'm afraid for once we're not ahead, but we're tailing that map. And so Switzerland is a beautiful country. People in Switzerland are great. I don't feel in any way today discriminated or whatever, but there's a long way to do in Switzerland, for companies in Switzerland, as well as on the legal level. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My experience is that the countries reach a kind of tipping point, actually, and that there is a things change, and then suddenly you realize they've really tipped over and there's a kind of different place. Are you saying that Switzerland sort of hasn't quite reached that point, perhaps, yet?
No, I think as many things go slow in our country, to the good or the bad sometimes, but I think when it comes to LGBT, it's going extremely slow. And sometimes I ask myself whether we gays are standing in our own way, as it was earlier said that we're not really asking for our rights. We're not really pushing for it. We're not really lobbying for it in the country because maybe we're too comfortable.
We don't have a lot of time, but I've got time for a question or a point. If anyone would like to make a contribution here or give their own experience, very happy to take that. Otherwise, I've got one more question for my panel. I just want to ask everybody one sort of short answer, if you would, all, which is dealing with hostility. It came out of your survey, Petra. Suppose you work in an environment, one of those environments that's not totally friendly, but it's mostly friendly, but not always. There's some hostility. It's how you cope with, or what advice you would give to someone who is coping with just a bit of hostility, somebody who is making stupid remarks, or somebody who is trying to put you down, or somebody who is making a fuss about working with someone who's LGBT. What advice, what experience do you have of working with someone with a hostile view, and what advice would you give? Maybe Petra, see if you...
I don't know if I'm the right person to answer because my life approach is like everybody has the right to my opinion. So, you know, here it goes with your personality a bit. And I was like trained to be small ginger with thick glasses, which prepared me well to the other coming out that you have to do. So, and always when it comes to some remarks, etc., either I can fight pretty well back, or I found out that as well as, again, it was told many times, that simply sometimes your weakness is just inside you, you know. If you face the people directly and you show them that, okay, if you have the problem with it, this is your problem, not mine. And it works. It mostly works.
Jamila, do you have any thoughts on that?
I actually do not have any personal experience with hostile behavior at the workplace. So I'm just thinking of the situation that kind of touched me as a person. And it was, for instance, when I told one of my friends about that I was gay, and she was from Slovakia, and she really stopped being in touch with me for nearly 1 year. And before that, I considered us to be pretty good friends. And that moment made me think again about whether I'm really okay or not. So this was what touched me.
That's an interesting story. Dushan.
Well, I'll definitely agree with what Pavel just said. Petr, sorry. Yeah. So Petr said, but I would also say one other thing, even that, let's say, if at work happens, because it didn't really happen to me, but if it happens over there, again, you are never alone, even at that work. You do have a colleagues that you are actually not really a friend with, but you do actually share some time with. Kind of have your network over there, because they can really help you. Because the one thing that many people should understand, you are not alone in this world. There will be some people that will be behind you. And I think one other thing is maybe what Petr just said over here, 55% actually are actually closeted, but only 29% I think that there is that negative environment or something. So it is really within us, yeah, that we don't want to really be out. So you have to be who you really are, to deal with that, to be proud with it, and then of course you can deal with the situation much better then.
Daniel, you get the last word.
It's easier said than done, but I would say stand up and engage the person into a conversation and saying, how would you feel if you would be gay?
Some little thoughts, practical tips there. We're going to move on, but let's thank our panel very much indeed for this session.